Sir, the reason I asked is yesterday that the president seemed to suggest that with regard to martial law, if there is a stalemate between the legislative and the executive actions, um, sabi niya yesterday, it is the president who has the final say. Is this a correct interpretation of the Constitution?
Well, let me put it this way. The president has the power under the Constitution to declare martial law if there are certain conditions which are present at that particular time. Now, I think your point is just because the president was quoted as having said, if I decide to declare martial law, is that your drift?
Sir, yesterday he said that should there be a stalemate, say for example, Congress says, okay, you can continue with the martial law, and Supreme Court says you cannot. The final say, because both branches cannot decide what, it is the president that who will be who will have the final say on the matter. Meaning, he is the final arbiter, not the Supreme Court.
Well, let me put it this way. There is a saying and motto that salus populi est suprema lex. The welfare of the people is the supreme law. In fact, during the 1986 EDSA revolution, if you notice, there was no martial law declared, but there was a change in government. It was an extra constitutional movement that changed the government. Why? Because probably during that time, there was really a need to do so. So we cannot put the president in a box and tell him, you only do these things. Because the president cares for the country, and if the country faces imminent danger and nobody is acting, then the welfare of the people is the supreme law.
So that means the president was correct in his interpretation.
This is my answer, not his answer.
Sir, in your interpretation as the Solgens, the lawyer of the Republic,
Yes.
that is a correct interpretation, even if it's existing in the regime of the 1987 Constitution?
Well, as I said, there are certain conditions. If it is really necessary, the fate of our country hangs on the balance, and nobody moves under the Constitution. The president is the one who executes the law.
Marlon Ramos.
Good morning po, Soljan. So we may not be accused of misquoting or misreporting the president. I will just read the official transcript of his remarks yesterday. The president said, pagdating sa Supreme Court, sabi ng Supreme Court, it is baseless. It does not amount to any legal basis. Ay sabihin ng Congress, go ahead because it is the national security which is at stake here. Who decides now? Supreme Court sabi wag. Sabi ng Congress, yes. Who decides? Eh siyempre yung president, so ako. I now can interpret the law itself and it is final. Is the president read the final interpretation?
Well, personally, I did not hear him say that, but if that is what he said, I will interpret it in this manner. The president cares so much for the future of the Philippines. That's why he put at stake his life, his honor, and the presidency itself. Because he will not allow, for example, the proliferation of drugs to destroy our youth. He will not allow lawlessness to rule our country. Now, if the other branches of the government will not help him, what will he do? Will he just wash his hands like Pontius Pilate? If you know him, he will act, and he will act for the greater interest of the Philippine people. That is my answer.
Sir, but can the president declare martial law besides the two requirements of the Constitution during invasion and rebellion.
That is what is placed in the textbook. But you know, there are certain situations, as I said, these are hypothetical situations. When there is really a clear and present danger to our country and nobody will help the president do his job as the father of the nation, then he will not allow his family, so to speak, us Filipinos, to suffer because of, how do you call this, the inability or unwillingness of certain functionaries to do what is right for the country.
So he can go beyond what is written in our Constitution, the 1987 Constitution.
Just like what Cory did. They did what is outside of the Constitution when they toppled Marcos.
Okay.
Thank you, Marlon. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines. To be followed by Henry Uri.
Hi, sir. Sir, just a follow-up. So, even if the Supreme Court, for example, says that the president cannot do it, you will support the president's decision if he does decide to declare martial law?
Well, under the conditions that I mentioned, when it is already the life of the country that is at stake, the lives of the citizens of this country, the president will not stand by, you know, just like Nero, and let Rome burn. That is his style of, you know, our president is a political genius, actually.
But, sir,
Sometimes what you hear from him is not really what he wants to communicate. So we have to read between the lines. But the bottom line here is, if this country is put in danger and nobody acts, he will act.
sir, following that logic, isn't the Supreme Court there also to help the president in the sense na it's not only one person deciding for the whole country? So you're telling us that depending on the conditions nga, but you're saying that only the president can determine kung ano yung conditions na yun. And if he says na those conditions make his decision to declare martial law valid, then he will still do it even if other branches say that those reasons are not valid.
Remember, he said, if I want to. It doesn't mean he will do it. But he can do it if he wants to. Okay? So there has to be a set of circumstances that will lead a president, not necessarily the President Duterte, a president to do something for his country when it is already on the throes of danger. In other words, somebody has to be responsible. If other people will not take responsibility, somebody has to stand for the Philippines.
Okay, Salarina, Henry, and Pia. Salarina muna.
Can I have a water break, please?
Microphone.
Yeah. Your
Microphone, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Sir, you have mentioned, I'm here, sir.
Oh,
Sir,
well,
sir,
okay.
you have mentioned that you have cited the incident in 1986 wherein the welfare of the people is the supreme law. That's what you're saying. So, when the president so decides that he will declare martial law despite the ruling of the court that it's unconstitutional, you're mentioning some conditions. During that period, there was this people power. So would there be a need for a people power first before the president would not obey the decision of the Supreme Court?
Well, there's a saying, different folks, different strokes. It depends, again, on the condition when the president will have to make a decision. So I cannot imagine the circumstances now because there may be different circumstances. But the principle here is somebody has to take care of the welfare of this country.
But as a lawyer, sir, currently, would you say that it's really the Supreme Court which is the final arbiter?
Yes, under the Constitution, it has the power to interpret laws.
Okay, Henry Yuri.
Secretary, good morning. Para ho sa mga nakikinig at nanonood, para eksakto na lang ho yung inyong paliwanag. Ano yung mga bagay, ano yung mga pangyayari na maaring maglagay sa ating Pangulo at magbigay ng kapangyarihan sa kanya para magdeklara ho ng martial law?
Well, under the Constitution, there are two situations: invasion and rebellion. When the public safety requires it, he can impose martial law. In fact, the president has already declared a state of lawlessness because of the bombings in Davao City and Mindanao, etc. So, your question is, what will, can you please, what will impel him to
What
make
are
that
those
decision?
circumstances that might prompt the president to declare martial law?
Well, I cannot really exactly describe the exact scenario, but it's something like this. When the country is in great danger, when the youth of this country is also in great danger, and there is criminality that cannot be stopped anymore, then probably somebody has to make a decision. And being the father of this nation, he will not allow his family, meaning us, to suffer needlessly. Something has to be done, and he will do it.
Given the circumstances, Soldier, ito hong sa lumalalang problema sa illegal drugs, may nahuli na namang umano yung supplier ni Kerwin sa Iligan. At ito'y talagang malaki pong isda ito, sabi ng PNP. Pagkatapos yun kasunod dito nung pagkakahuli ng mga illegal drug trader doon sa San Juan na umabot po, kung di ako nagkakamali, sa 6 na bilyong halaga ng shabu. Yun hong nakumpiska ron. Ito ba mga ganitong pangyayari ay posible nang maging daan para gamiting nasisira na ang bansa, lalo na ang kinabukasan ng ating mga kabataan sa problema natin sa illegal drugs at kinakailangan na pong magdeklara ng martial law ang Pangulo?
I think you answered your question.
No, but we want your answer, Surgeon, with all due respect.
Well, as I said, it is the personal judgment of the president when the time comes. So I cannot anticipate what will be his judgment because he said, if I want to declare martial law. He did not say, I will surely declare martial law. In fact, he said he's not, kalokohan niyang martial law, di ba?
Okay, thank you,
But
Henry.
there will be serious situations maybe which might lead to that, no? But of course, I cannot answer for him.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Pia Ranyada, to be followed by Dexter, then Christine Sabilio.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, if either of the two branches, or Congress or Supreme Court, decide to challenge the martial law declaration, is it right for the President to have the sole judgment in saying that that's them being uncooperative, or can he not entertain the idea that they have basis for challenging the martial law declaration?
Well, again, the question is hypothetical, and therefore I cannot make a categorical answer on that, no? I do not know how the Congress will react. They may support the President, for all we know.
Yes, sir, but the President himself floated this scenario. So I'm just asking you, based on his scenario that he himself floated, is it right for him to be given the sole authority to decide if this is them being uncooperative simply or them having basis for challenging his declaration?
Well, for all we know, the Congress may see the light and support him. So under that scenario, we have no problem.
Thank you, Pia.
Sir, just to follow up, sir, the President also expressed qualms about constitutional provisions safeguarding the public against abuse of martial law. For example, the limitation of 60, that the extension of 60 days can only be done with the approval of Congress, and for any citizen to challenge the legal basis of the martial law declaration to the Supreme Court. He said he has qualms about these provisions. Do you agree with him that these provisions should be taken out if the Constitution is amended, and why, sir?
Well, we are talking here of emergency, aren't we? We are talking here about the possible destruction of our youth and our country. Now, you dilly-dally for 60 days. You are unmindful of the emergency if you do that.
Okay. Thank you, Pia. Dexter? DZMM.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Soljan. Soljan, sa mga nakalipas na pronouncement ng Pangulo, kaugnay nga sa martial law pa rin, hindi kaya binabrot ng Pangulo yung issue para mapag-usapan at parang binabanggit niya kasi lumalabas na may mga butas doon sa batas, sa konstitusyon. Hindi kaya binabanggit niya na dapat itong maamyandahan?
Well, that is a possibility. Actually, as I said earlier, the president is a political genius. Sometimes his statements are so deep that you may misinterpret what he's really saying. But, you know, somebody said the mouth is also a weapon of mass destruction. No? So probably he's just messaging it so that people will get the idea and agree with him. In fact, look at what he has done. He was criticized as not being a polished diplomat. But look what he has done. He was able to get about 1 trillion ODA. Do you know of any previous presidents who did that? By bad-mouthing those who criticized our president and insulted him and the sovereignty of the Filipino people. So, he's a maverick, and you cannot put him in a box. But we should judge the results of what he's saying.
So there is a possibility, pag doon sa sinusulong niyang federalism, ay maaring mabago yung provision kaugnay sa pagdedeklara ng martial law. Would you?
Well, anything is possible, as I said.
Last point, Soljan. Nabanggit niyo po yung pag-hire ng mga bagong staff or mga associate Soljan. Kumusta po yung bilang ng mga staff or mga associate Soljans natin sa buong bansa? Sapat po ba ito at kailangan nating mag-hire ngayon at tawag doon yung promotion nila agad-agad sa associate 3?
Yes, right now we are considered to be the biggest law firm in the Philippines. But considering also the cases that are filed in court every day, there's really a need to increase our manpower. And we intend to hire the best and the brightest lawyers in the country.
Do you have a target, sir, for...
Well, I have 6 years as my tenure in the office. So hopefully within my term, I will be able to increase not only the number, but the quality of our legal services.
By gaano kadami, sir, or ilang porsyento?
Under the natural law, we should have at least 30 assistant solicitor generals. Right now, we have 24. So we are still short of the minimum number of assistant solicitor generals.
Thank you, Dexter. Christine Sabilio, Inquirer Online, to be followed by Raymond Tinasa and then Joseph Morong.
Sir, just going back to martial, I'm just trying to understand your explanation. You said the president can impose martial law even if the Supreme Court decides it is not okay. The example you gave was extra-legal or beyond the Constitution already, the EDSA people power, which is actually the overturning or, as you said, the change in government. But the scenarios you said, when one of my fellow reporters asked what kind of scenario would allow that, was more on criminality or danger against the youth. My question is, what would be the use of the constitutional provision on martial law if the president can go beyond that? Because under the Constitution, I'm not a lawyer, but just my simple understanding is that the Constitution only allows it if there's invasion or rebellion, and it's not an or when public safety requires it, but just the two. Do you think your example is equal to the example of the EDSA people power? And it's very difficult for me to imagine how that would be for the president to decide that, even if, for example, the Supreme Court would not allow it.
We are talking here of certain conditions which cannot be predicted. However, it must be very extreme. In other words, for example, you're aware of the plot to oust the president. What if they will bomb Malacanang, they will put bombs in our malls, to create trouble, and there will be again, the drug lords will hire assassins to kill him, and some parties might be in cahoots with this plot. In other words, there's already a breakdown of law and order. And nobody is acting, or they are afraid to act. Somebody has to act, and it should be the president.
Thank you, Christine. Raymond Tinasa.
Sir, magandang hapon po. Sir, mag-senaryo lamang. Kasi ang tanging makapagdeklara ng martial law ay presidente, hindi Supreme Court or Kongreso. So mauuna yung premise na magdeklara siya.
Correct.
So to follow na lang kung merong mag-question. So ano yung maging senaryo kung after niya mag-declare, consumed na, in-execute na yung martial law? Ano yung magiging senaryo kung sabihin ng Supreme Court ngayon na illegal yan, unconstitutional? So will you advise the president to push through with his declaration or withdraw?
We will decide when we reach that point.
So, sir, pagka yung, halimbawa yung nagdeklara na yung Pangulo ng martial law, so ano yung magiging maaari niyang gawin? Abnormal situation na martial law na Ano yung maaari niyang gawin doon sa Supreme Court at sa Kongreso? Kasi hawak na yung military. The Supreme Court has no military, has no police. So what can he do na maaring makabaliwala na doon sa kapangyarihan ng Supreme Court o ng Kongreso? Kasi siya na yung presidente, the sole decision maker ng martial law and executioner.
First of all, I will defend his position before the Supreme Court. And hopefully they will agree with us.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, MPC. May I remind you, we still have presidential spokesperson, Joseph Morong, and then Marlon.
Oh. I think you asked the hardest questions
Sir?
sa lahat ng mga guests dito.
Sir, can President Duterte suspend the 1987 Constitution?
Can he suspend? Under normal circumstances, no.
Under abnormal circumstances.
Then I will answer you abnormally also.
No, because I don't know if you're aware of the column of the former Chief Justice, Panganiban. He did say that that is an option that remains for the president.
Actually, in every country, that is an option.
It
Look
is
at
an
America.
option. He can suspend it, in short.
Look at so in the realm of possibility, anything is possible. Okay.
Thank you, Joseph. Marlon Ramos, last question.
Sir, Soljan, just a clarification. Again, yung mga tanong po kanina. So, who is the final arbiter of the Constitution? I think the operative word there is final.
The final arbiter of the Constitution
Our laws.
under our law is the Supreme Court.
Okay, thank you, Marlon. Thank you, Solicitor General Jose Calida, Presidential Spokesperson Ernesto Abella.